May 21st special meeting of the Bolton Finance Committee. And we're calling it to order at 7:15 PM. And for those who are regular participants in this and members of the team, we do not have our board clerk, Mary, with us tonight. So I'll ask all of us to speak slowly and clearly. And if you remember, please say who you are speaking so she knows, by the voice. And also I will ask any members of the public when we get to that part to clearly state their name if they want to participate in their address again, so that we can have that in the record. Because we are just she's going to do the minutes from the recording, and we'll check with me about any questions she has, but the fewer questions, the better.
Participant, right.
Okay.
So just ask folks to.
Yeah.
And muting folks if I hear them speaking. So anyway, we will get started with call to order. I am Ross Lally, the chair of the Finance Committee. We have members of the Finance Committee present in the room. Rhea Klein from Board of Ed. Amanda Gordon from Board of Selectmen. Chris Connolly is a member at large. And we also have Tyler Egner, member at large. Ashley Phelan, who is from the Board of Education. And we also have present our incoming superintendent of schools, David Caruso, and we have our first selectman, Rodney Fournier. So those are the folks in the room and we will get to the members of the public who are here. And online, I am looking to see, we have our town administrator, Jim Rupert, our current Board of Education, superintendent of the Board of Education, is Kristen Hecht, and Jill Collins, our chief financial officer. And I am looking to see who else we have here. Andrew Broneal, who is the chair of the Board of Ed. And we also have some other members of the Board of Ed, and they can speak as members of the public. So why don't we get started with public participation? And I will just ask folks, if you guys who are present in the room wish to participate, come on up and state your name and address and say what you want. If not, we can move on to folks online. Yes, please. Just so the microphone can hear you and we can make sure. Have a seat if you want.
Thank you. My name's Jessica Saffron. I live at 19 Rocco Road.
So Jessica Saffron.
Saffron, yeah.
Okay.
I just, first and foremost, I want to thank all of the members who sit around this table, and for those of you who are virtual, because putting forward a budget takes a lot of time, energy, and effort. But maybe people in the town don't realize is the months and hours that are spent bringing forward fiscally responsible budgets. And I truly believe that people who work in this town are doing that. No one's going in saying, I want the world, I want the things. They enter and propose things in the best reality to bring forward what's best for our town. And with that, knowing that it's hard and it's a challenge and that getting a budget passed the first time is never easy. So I want to start by thanking you all. And I think just as we move forward, looking at how do we just continue to do the best? I know that as a former employee of Bolton Board of Education, I know that, the school is the biggest financial aspect of the budget. And when looking at the documents that you all shared with us, that 70% and those, the places where the salaries are, we have contracts with people. We pay how Bolton Board of Ed pays comparatively to other places in the state is not at the same level as other places, and that's a reality. And we do the best, and it's finding that balance here. But as a parent of child who loves her school, thrives in her school, and wants to continue to thrive, and we want that, just how we balance all those. As I also want to be able to drive on my roads and, on the bridges, we are active in Park and Rec. and all of those elements. So just as we continue to move forward, I know and thank you and trust that, you will do the best and, balancing the needs of the town as a whole, as well as, the school system and what can do to keep us moving forward with knowing, that cuts have to come from somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So do we have any questions for
oh,
or Claire?
No, really appreciate it.
No, appreciate it.
Appreciate the support.
you're welcome.
Next. Nope. She said it all. Okay. Anybody online, if you would either raise a real hand or raise a virtual hand if you would like to contribute. And remember to unmute yourself. I am not seeing any hands raised or people literally waving their hands. So just a question, is Robert Mora, one of our selectmen out there? He was going to dial in from Arizona, and I'm wondering if one of these numbers is Mr. Mora. Since none of the numbers are muted and we're not hearing anything back, I do not think Mr. Mora is attending at the moment. Hopefully he will be able to call in from Phoenix. So I know that was his intent, but knows how the flights go and whatever.
It's
So,
really quiet if those numbers are not muted. Do they show up with a mute button?
yeah, pretty much everybody is muted by default.
Because they may not know how to come off mute.
Right.
You'd have to hit *6 if you want to unmute and say anything.
They might not be able to raise their hand if they're done.
Right, and like sometimes the mute is weird. *6 should unmute yourself if you wanted to chime in, I believe.
Like, can you hear me right now?
Yes.
Yes, we
there-
can.
Okay, so I'm not muted and I'm dialing in, so I guess we're good there.
Okay, thank you.
Well, guess we have no further comment. I will just relay some comments that I got from my other hat that I wear, working at the polls as a registrar of voters. And as you know, it was like basically a 2-to-1 margin. We had 1,005 votes. 2/3 of those were against and 1/3 were for. The comments that I heard that were for were very much as, Shannon? Jessica, I'm sorry. Jessica Saffron. So I sort of merged them, got the last name. That was the name, Saffron was the name of my librarian back in high school. So that's rung a bell. But anyway, the comments I got were either similar to Jessica's comments. And I just chatted with a couple of neighbors today when I was out for a walk, and the same thing were the ones who felt it was a balanced budget and the best that, we could do. The other comments that I heard they were sure that we are hiding money someplace. These are some of the comments that I see from online. And I've also heard, and they take that because we have monies that, we have left over at the end of the year, because not all the bad things happen or all the uses of things happen that we've anticipated, and that money is left over and it goes into the general fund to be used to reduce taxes. And for the following year. And it also gains interest, which helps to reduce, the taxes. And so that's one thing that they have a concern about, and is that. The other thing that I heard was most of the negative comments were about the size of the school budget relative to the Board of Selectmen's budget. And we had comments I heard such as, we need to get rid of all the schools. We need to get rid of the high school. And I will pass this on. I don't always agree with these comments I hear, but I am passing them on just because I heard them and I told people that I would. And I just want to keep my word to them. I will just respond to the question about if you got rid of the high school, let's say miraculously, we just shut it down the next day. They do that. What you need to consider is also we have that building to maintain. And if we do not maintain that building or find another use for it, it winds up in the same way that the old center school did. And so you still have ongoing physical plant costs. And the other thing that don't take into account is that we still have to pay for the education of those children and young adults to send them elsewhere. And that may or may not be the same cost as going to the high school. It could be more, could be less, it could be the same. And then if you did terminate all those folks, there are various severance agreements that you have to honor. And so that would effectively mean you're paying staff for, depending on what their termination agreements are, for months to a year or two afterwards. So you actually wind up increasing your costs in the short term. And again, just responding because that was the question that was asked. And I just want to get that answer. If anybody disagrees with that, please, step up. I'm just giving a very high level analysis. This is not going and actually running the numbers. This is just from my own experience with shutting down other offices when, this is in private sector, but the expenses you incur are still the same. You have union agreements, you have contractual agreements, you have state obligations to pay unemployment and so forth. So, yeah, maybe possibly a long-term savings of some amount, who knows? And it also might be that you could repurpose the use of those, avoid having to construct a new town hall. So you save the costs of bonding for that to a certain extent, but you'd still have to make changes to the physical plant if you wanted to make it usable for other purposes. So I just wanted to respond to those folks who asked that question. Ashley, you have a comment?
I totally understand where the questions are coming. Actually, in advance of this budget cycle, we had asked, Kristen, Superintendent Peck, to help support us do an analysis of what it would cost to have our kids educated elsewhere, in a really detailed analysis, not just high level, but bottoms up, costs. And based on our current population level and enrollment size, it is not cost effective. It would actually cost more to have those kids educated elsewhere, at this point. So I do share that. Certainly something to always continue to monitor, based on enrollment sizes and costs, every couple of years. I think it's important to do that refresh based on where we currently are. That is, where that analysis did shake up.
Yeah. Thank you. And again, I also agree with not only for Board of Ed, but also for Board of Selectmen. This is something we should just all constantly be doing, is just because the contract looks good now this year, is it still good next year? Because other vendors may have come or gone and there may be a different set of players out there. There might be an opportunity, there might not, but it's, due diligence. Yes.
And I will
Amanda.
say, I troll whatever. I follow everything on social media the best that I can, and try and keep up with it and answer questions to the best of my ability. But, there have been some of the same concerns on the Board of Selectmen side, which I can speak to more obviously than the Board of Ed. Concerns that, we have too many quote unquote assistants. I don't really know what they meant by that. I did clarify that we have very minimal admin assistance in the true sense of the word. It wasn't, and saying like, we have assistants that help in departments, but they are they're part-time people or full-time people fulfilling the function of that department and are not really administrative in the true sense of the word. And then a few folks chiming in and saying, well, if we got a $700,000 cut from state money, that means we need a $700,000 cut on the expense side. No suggestions as to where we potentially get that, though there were several people who said that we should give up trash collection, and move to a system where there's trash drop off, but we don't have a current analysis of what that would cost. Obviously, there would be a cost associated with that because our current transfer station is only open minimal hours and cannot handle the load that would come with regular drop
It's
off.
not set up for it
Right,
because there's no staging area big enough for that.
Right. So I haven't seen too many concrete suggestions as to where the cuts come from, but just, a lot of it's too high. We can't take this. I will say that, the points that I've reiterated is that all of the expenses and increases that our residents have incurred, we as a town have also incurred increases to our utilities, right? Increases to our insurance. And in addition, I think one of the extra costs that we carry as a town and as a school system that individual residents don't carry is the cost of our cyber insurance and the cost of managing our IT infrastructure. More and more, that's become a huge area that the town and the school have to consider, and it's a very large expense. And unfortunately, it's a necessary one given today's environment and the
Huge
security, right? It's a huge liability, it's a huge risk, and it's also something we can't avoid, right? We can't have our children not have access to these Chromebooks. We can't have our staff not have access to online servers and the cloud. It's just, we need to be moving in that
It's not even
direction.
just the schools, it's for the Board of Selectmen.
Oh,
it's for
absolutely.
everybody.
The staff, yep. And so that is a very large and increasing cost for both the town and the Board of Ed, as well. The other comments that I've heard are how do we increase revenue to the town, right? And I think I laid out 3 options: economic development, increased granting, and something else I can't remember off the top of my head. That one's a while ago. All of which require spend more to make more, right? If we want economic development, we need to increase the time that we have our economic development staff person. She's only part-time, she's a contractor. She doesn't have the time to effectively go out and recruit business to town. And then grant writing, right? If you really want us to get more grants, we need someone who can go find those grants and then apply for those grants. Because that is a huge lift as well.
But there's matches to the grants.
Right, and there's also matches to the grants, which we have tried to build into budgets, and ultimately, in some years, it's ended up getting cut. Which means that when there are grant opportunities, we can't go after them because we don't have enough money in the coffers to pay for the match.
And a lot of the grants require that we put the money up front and then the government or private entity reimburses us at a future date. So we still have to have that money up front in order to get it back at a future date. So there's a lot of moving pieces, and I will just say to you folks out there, and I hope that you're listening either right now or will listen to the recording. If you are unhappy with this budget, I need you, all of us need you to start coming to meetings when the budgets are being developed, to participate in the process and to come with ideas and be willing to talk, openly about them, because we are certainly happy to have you come to the table. And you will get more results than getting yourselves riled up in an echo chamber where you just go and bounce the same thoughts off each other. And I really mean that you need to come to these meetings and you need to participate, and it has to happen much earlier in the process. It can't happen at the last minute like this, because if we were to make some really substantial cuts, and we're going to talk about them later, I did a spreadsheet up. So when we get to that part, they require work over several years in order to implement so that you don't make a mess out of what you're trying to fix. And this is, it requires a certain sense of urgency, but not a headlong rush to doing it. So that's part of it, because we don't really have an actionable business plan on the part of the town to increase business. And it's not been created, it's not been socialized, it's not been discussed with the public. And I will just make a statement that when I've asked for similar plans from the Board of Ed for increasing the student body, there is not a plan for doing that that's actionable, that has milestones. And so you need the time to create that plan, get buy-in from the other members of the government, from the board, the town government, and from the public. Because otherwise you're just doing something and people are going to reject it if they haven't had a participation in it. So all of this stuff takes 3 to 5 years. I'm not excusing the lack of our not having these plans. I'm just saying that we need to get started with them and we need to get the public involved. And it will be a relatively slow process to get it going. But like I said, this stuff does not happen overnight. And that's why we really need participation. That's the end of my soapbox for this part of discussion. Anybody else? I just don't want to hog things.
May I make a comment?
And who is, may I?
Sarah LaRoche. I live at 15 French Road.
I'm sorry, the name again?
Sarah LaRoche.
Sharon LaRoche?
Sarah.
Shara
Yep.
LaRoche. Okay.
Yes.
Have at it, please.
So you were talking about finding these grants. Do we currently have a grant finding position open? Is it like a contract thing?
We do not currently fund a position, contract or otherwise, to search for and apply for grants. All of that's currently handled by existing staff, usually the town administrator, who has many, many other job duties.
And are we speaking just for Board of Selectmen or?
That's on the, sorry, that's on the Board of Selectmen side. I can't speak to the
And
Board of Ed.
Kristen for Board of Ed?
Same is true for the Board of Education. Normally, it's me and or Beth Goldsnyder, our Director of HR and Student Support Services, and Monica Giglio Casper, our Director of Teaching and Learning.
Okay. Do you have to have any special certifications to offer your services? Because I feel I could help in some way, but I'm not sure if I need certain certificates.
No, there's no as someone who looks for and applies for grants, like, you know, you need to have a decent writing skills and stuff and a certain level of knowledge about what you're writing the grant for. I would say that finding the grants is the difficult piece, and that requires some level of experience and skill in terms of having access to certain databases, and knowing what to look for and how to call out what we're eligible for or not eligible for and what the criteria is. But the writing of the grants, I mean, I think there's been a couple occasions where we've had some volunteer assistants writing pieces of the grants, but that's few and far between, but it's something to explore.
Some are extremely difficult too.
Oh,
Cyber
very.
grant was just crazy. And they got.
Oh,
it all
I'm
done.
sure that the requirements are
So what I
ridiculous.
would-
I'm just.
I would
Go
just
ahead,
ask if
sorry.
you want to help. No, I'm just saying, I don't want to make it sound like we don't want your help or don't appreciate it. But I would say, why don't you who would be a good contact for her to reach out to here if she wanted to talk to somebody about where she could be helped? Would it be in the town or would it be with one of the town committees, either the Democratic or Republican?
No,
I think we'll start with Jim, but I
Jim.
appreciate all and any help,
Yeah,
really.
that's, I don't
You know?
want to make it sound like we're turning her away because we really need help.
Yeah, we do, yeah. I think Jim would be a good person to start with.
So we're suggesting reaching out to Jim Rupert, our town administrator, who is online right now. So Jim,
and I will say, like, so I'm speaking about official grants that are applied for on behalf of the town. I will say that grants have been applied for on behalf by like the senior commission,
The library.
the library
Library.
commission, the Heritage Farm. So like there are entities that have applied for grants that benefit the town that haven't been officially through the town. And so those are opportunities. I know like they've been applying for grants for the playground, the accessible playground at BCS. So there's a variety of community grants that we've received that commissions or volunteers have helped to get that have not been official town grants.
That's good.
Okay. Yeah, my background just tends to be like in informational writing and that type of thing.
Oh.
So if I can
yes,
offer my services, I would like to help.
Awesome.
awesome.
We'll pass your name
Okay.
to Jim and someone will.
Maybe there's a particular commission that would be able to help her out. Or she could help her.
Yeah.
Could she could she start with you, Rodney?
Yeah,
Just to.
yeah, you can start with me too.
You can send your information to Rodney Fournier, R Fournier, FOURNIER at boltonct.gov.
And if you want their phone number, town phone numbers and town email addresses are on our website in case their names are not clear to you when we're talking.
No worries. I think though, I had reached out via one of the email addresses on the website and it sends it to an old website. And I was told that it has a different address now. So that may just be something you want your IT to also double check.
Yeah, everything now should be boltonct.gov, not or .org. Yeah, we've switched to the .gov.
Okay, there might just be a couple links on the website that aren't updated
Okay,
yet. Just a
we'll
heads up.
have people double check.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yep, and that's all from me.
Okay, any other comments? Because I want to move. Don't want to miss anybody who wants to speak, but I also want to move our meeting along because we're going to probably be having a rather intense discussion when it comes to what to do with, the fact that the, budget did not pass at the referendum. So going once, going twice, going thrice. Let's go on with the other closing public participation and going on to approval of minutes. So let's go on to the minutes of our April 22nd, 2025 public hearing.
Thanks.
I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes as is.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the public hearing on April 22nd.
Do I have a second on that? Second. Motion was made by Amanda Gordon, seconded by Tyler Egner. Just further discussion?
Just on page 2, Mary and school, there's just a couple of errors there.
Yeah, so Mary Terhune should be Terhune. And I don't know her number,
School road.
just school road. I don't know what the forest, it's just school road, so eliminate the word forest and
Yep.
school road.
And that comment was from Rhea Klein.
So I'll amend my motion to accept the minutes with the suggested change.
You have a second on the amendment? You want to do that, Tyler? Second. So seconded again by the amendment, seconded by Tyler. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes unanimously by all voting members present. And just a reminder, I am not a voting member. Let's move on to the minutes of our Finance Committee special meeting of Thursday, May 1st. For that, I will also entertain a motion to approve as is.
Still moved by Amanda.
I'll second.
Moved by Amanda, seconded by Rhea. Discussion.
Believe that under number 2, and I don't know how she spells her first name, but I believe Filaramo is spelled with an F. Filaramo instead of a PH.
Further discussion.
Oh, that's the May 1st.
Yep.
I think, the name is Scott Michelle, is that?
Yeah, it is Scott.
I don't know.
Yeah, it is. You have Steve on here.
With 1 T.
Yeah, it
That
is.
was what it was on all of the.
It's Scott. It's not Steve.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's on page 1, the last paragraph, the beginning of it. SCOT Michelle. Any further comments?
I will amend my motion to accept the minutes with the proposed changes.
You have a second on that from Rhea.
I'll second.
So we have an amendment that was made and seconded. No further discussion. I'm seeing all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So all voting members present voted unanimous aye. So it is unanimous by those voting members present. So let us then move on to our ongoing business, which is discussion on FY 2024-25 revenues and expenditures. If we have any significant changes or updates to those that would impact what we're thinking about for 2025 and 26.
Jill, any changes to revenues that would result in more money for us to put towards next year's budget?
Not anything that's really substantial. Less than 15,000 for tax.
Okay.
Really isn't anything substantial.
So we got $15,000. Is that what we're gonna say we can do that? And
We would have to revise the revenues for next year officially.
Now,
I don't,
you can only do it.
oh, that's right, it came out
Yep.
Yeah, we would have,
unofficially.
yeah, we would have to
Know that there's
back
revenue.
into
Yeah.
it, knowing that there's revenue and adjust the mill rate accordingly.
where did it come from, Jill?
I'm sorry.
Tax?
Tax.
So,
All of the revenue I looked at today really isn't anything substantial for everything that I looked at. All the revenue.
so is the 15,000 though was the question, was the tax revenue and change?
Not only tax.
Okay, it's total changes.
Correct.
And that is just for Board of Selectmen budget, correct?
Well, that's the only revenue that the budget. the
Yeah,
Board
I
of
just say,
Selectmen
just-
split.
Yeah.
I know, I'm just clarifying for the
Okay.
public listening. Sometimes I ask questions I know the answers to, because there's people who don't know it. I'm, asking on their behalf. Okay, anything from Board of Ed? Or Amanda, you had a question before?
Well, where does the discussion about give backs, that would be for this year's expenditures, right? So that would be under A.
Yes,
So are there any changes to anticipated FY 25 expenditures that would result in potential additional give backs from either board?
Not for the Board of Ed.
Jim is on.
Yeah.
Any for a Board of Selectmen?
Yeah, I expect that we'll probably have an additional 50,000 over what we had discussed before.
And that brings the board of selectmen to a total of what, Jim? I can't remember what we already. Yeah,
I think it was 100 in the last discussion.
Now it's 150.
So that also cannot be recognized because that's in the revenue column. So we can only do
So
it
for,
unofficially.
so
Right.
BO, so
Yeah.
then for
So
BOS, then that's what? It's 100 and what? So it's 100 plus we heard Jill, you mentioned 15 and then Jim mentioned 50.
but the 100 was already included, so in terms of,
Well, I'm just thinking for the total, do we include that at 100 in the last, in
Yeah.
the previous? Okay, so the additional amount is 65,000.
yeah,
Okay. And none from Board of Ed.
Ross, just as you're moving forward, the Board of Ed does have information to share though about FY 25-26 when you get
Okay.
there.
Let's see if we have any other questions on 24 to 25.
Jim, I mean, or Jill, do you know where that 50K is coming from? Like, is it all over the place or?
It's not one specific location.
Okay.
Meeting to order. Senator John. Public comment?
They said they have.
Oh,
Yeah.
is someone asking if they can? chime in?
Is someone asking a question? I don't know who that was. because there's no more public comment at
Yeah,
this
we can't
point.
take.
It was the cell phone ending in 8850.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's for, if people are
Yep.
trying to chime in, unfortunately, it's a special meeting and we cannot amend the agenda to allow for any public comment at this time.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, I pushed the button by mistake. Bruce Dixon, Fire Chief.
No, Bruce. Guess we'll excuse you. Okay, then let's go on to discussion on FY 2025 and 2026 revenue and expenditures, and then Kristen Hecht.
Thank you. So we had a special meeting earlier today, the Board of Ed did, with regards to moving forward on our BHS ADA transition pads so that they could approve the bid. I shared with them that we have our information on insurance from, as you know, we were quoted the 13.5% that we budgeted for, and then it came in 2% lower, but we had not gone through open enrollment yet. So between that and we have filled 2 vacant positions for teaching positions for next year. One was a retirement and one was a top step teacher who's going on to be teaching someplace else. You could make a cut to the Board of Education of $230,000 between those 2 pieces of savings that would have no impact on programs, services for children, or the staff that we currently employ.
So how much again? I'm sorry, 200, what?
$230,000.
$230K.
Now, sorry, just for clarification's sake, none of that money is coming from the BHS ADA transitional pads. That was just why you were meeting.
Correct.
No, yeah, that's just why we were meeting, and I shared that information because that
Got
was an agenda item on our agenda special
So
meeting.
it's from insurance savings and the 2 vacant positions coming in at lower rates than the people
New
that
hires
vacated.
coming in much lower, yes.
Okay.
So, Kristen, basically, just for those people who might think we were holding money back, that's not what happened was due to the change in personnel that happened just now. We
Correct.
realized these savings.
Correct. And we budgeted on the number that insurance gave us for budgeting purposes. And then they came in 2% lower during this process, but we had not yet gone through open enrollment. So we did not know how that would either adversely or positively affect our insurance number. So you're absolutely correct, Rhea. Thank you. And unfortunately, we couldn't get it done in time before the budget was set because we did not have the dental and vision rates until very late.
Which is something we deal with every year. So this is for those, that are listening, like this is obviously the budget is always an estimate and things are always changing as numbers come in. And so timing unfortunately is an issue. We can't push off we have deadlines for when we have to approve the budget. And so we make our decisions based on the best information we have at the time, but information can come in after that, which we can now use to make potential reductions. So, Jim, any changes to expected expenditures for the Board of Selectmen for next year?
No, and I can say that we already did adjust our insurance to
Correct.
reflect the 11% increase rather than the 13. We also initially budgeted at the 13%, which Kristen and I had discussed and agreed on, but we were able to make that adjustment.
Yep.
The town just doesn't have nearly as many employees as the Board of Ed, so it's a little easier for us to be more predictable with the insurance rates. But no, I have no new information that's going to impact expenses and revenues for the next budget.
Anything on the capital budget for either?
So, I've been looking at ways that we could potentially reduce our ask in two places where we have some available funding from grants would be, low SIP entitlement money. And I do think that the roofing project and the town hall door project in the capital budget, we could probably get funded out of our available low SIP entitlement funds. I did also look at Town Aid Road, thinking about potentially trying to be able to, one of the biggest expenses, single expenses we have in our capital budget this year is for vehicles. And I was looking at Town Aid Road to see if we could potentially, fund part of a plow truck out of Town Aid Road, but that's a capital expense, so it's not permissible. The only thing we could do is, swap out some funding for road and highway repair out of the highway budget and replace that with Town Aid Road.
Yeah.
And I think, it would be fairly easy for us to make a swap there of $100,000 with what we have available and what we think we're going to be getting for this year.
And you're talking about just Town Aid Road on that 100, or you're talking about both low SIP and
So
Town Aid Road?
it would be 100 for Town Aid Road, when we would, the Board of Selectmen would have to work with me to cut that out of the Highway Department's budget for roads and highways. And then we would just supplement that with Town Aid Road funds. But then in the capital budget, we could reduce, if we want to take a chance, then we'd have to apply and get approval. But I think these are projects that would potentially be approved, which would be the firehouse roof. And we have, I believe, 38,000 in the budget this year. But we would probably try to just apply for the whole amount, which was 38,000 this year and 38,000 next year, and try to get that done. And then the other thing we could potentially remove and try to fund through our low SIP entitlement funds is the door replacement at Town Hall, which is 20,000,
20.
which is 20,000, and both of those items would be out of the capital budget.
So what would the net be and what would we want to put it under? What would the net savings be and how is this accounted for when we start putting numbers together?
38.
Well, those would simply be reductions in the capital budget.
Okay, so do you have the net on it, Jim?
So it would be 38,000 plus,
It's 96,000 for low SIP.
96.
And then for Town Aid Road, do we want to stick with the 100, or do we want to identify very specific vehicles that we would want to swap out?
Except, Amanda, it would be only 58 for this year's capital budget, because we had 38 in
Correct,
this year.
you're right. Yep.
So it'd be a total reduction in the town's ask on the capital of 58,000, and then we would potentially reduce the highway budget by 100,000 and use Town Aid Road toward road repairs, as opposed to using all taxpayer dollars.
So 158,000 total.
Yes,
What is the
So do we have-
58,000 made up of again?
that would be made up of the 38,000 we have in for the fire department roof, and the 20,000 we have in for the
The door?
town hall doors.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And are we sure? Well, so I'm trying to look at the vehicles to make sure that the vehicles we can pay for out of that swap total to $100,000. Because right now we have the
So
senior
we-
center mini. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm not suggesting that we remove any vehicles. I looked to see if we could do that. But Town Aid Road does not allow us to use it for capital purchases. So what we would do is to take, I believe there's $338,000 in there for road repairs next year in the highway budget.
Right.
And we would knock that down by $100,000 and use Town Aid Road monies in place of $100,000 that we remove from that particular budget.
Right, but we would be using that 100,000 to cover vehicles.
No, we would use it
No.
to repair roads and bridges and that sort of thing. No, we still have funding $110,000 in next year's capital budget.
Oh. Right, so, okay.
So I just did
okay,
some
I'm
math
getting
and
it, I
it's
think.
coming up as the combined.
Yeah.
The combined total, we're just talking about 453,000.
Between the board,
Between the
both
Board of
boards?
Selectmen
okay.
finding some of those, that 65,000, which isn't really a reduction, but will be factored in.
right,
And then we have the 230K from the Board of Education because of salary reductions. And then for nothing from the Board of Selectmen's budget. And then from Kappa, we have an additional 158 and I came up with 453.
Oh, it's $100,000 out of the Board of Selectmen's budget and 58 out of capital.
Not valid.
I'm not following you. I thought that.
yeah. So we're getting rid of the roof. The roof and the town hall, that's 58 from capital. The 100 that's coming out of the
Highway,
highway.
and so that's the Board of Selectmen's budget. It's $100,000 out of the Board of
Okay.
Selectmen's.
So technically the total, well, no, never
The
mind. I'm
total
not gonna-
doesn't change, it's
Yeah,
just the
right,
buckets that
right,
come out of it. So I just adjusted my notes here to say Board of Selectmen, additional potential basically leftover funds for this, for fiscal 25, 65,000. And
Right,
the Board of Ed has no additional return of funds for this year. And then for next year, BOE, I have a $230,000 savings, Board of Selectmen, 100,000. And then from Kappa, which is combined for both Board of Ed and Board of Selectmen, we have 58K coming out now.
and just to clarify for folks that are on the call, I just want them to understand, so LoTSIP and Town Aid Roads are grants that we get, entitlement grants that we get from the state that carry over year, and so we have some leftover funds that we can carry over to cover those projects. Jim, is that a correct explanation?
That's accurate. Like LoCIP is entitlement money. We get money every year. We've kind of been trying to save it a little bit in order to do some potential larger projects. But, this is a tough budget year. And I think it certainly is an opportunity to use some of those monies that we've been saving to offset the capital budget because we're asking for an awful lot. There's a lot of needs in the capital budget this year, both on the Board of Ed side and the town side. And I think it's reasonable to dip into those funds, to try to get these projects moving forward because they're needed, but it still allows us to meet the goals that we've had when we set these budgets.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate that the capital plan that we have, it is really, a lot of it is ongoing maintenance of facilities that we have that we can't let fall apart. It's replacement of vehicles that are critical to old. We are very good at keeping them for a long time and then auctioning them off and getting something back for that. And again, it's one of those things, you need these vehicles for operations. You need them for both the, Board of Ed and Board of Selectmen. You need to maintain our buildings, otherwise you wind up in a mess like we did with the old Bolton Center School, where you had the registrars and finance department working in a building that was condemned that you wouldn't let the public into. And we can't just continue to, to operate like that. Our buildings are treasures that we have. And they can't be let go. So I think it's a prudent use of, our funds, for that. Comments from anybody else?
Just a question, did we see the spreadsheet with the changes? Are we going to see that before we don't see that?
Which spreadsheet?
So we can't see the spreadsheet with the changes because it's lump sums off the bottom. We can't remove.
Pieces?
Right.
So we're just gonna, so when we vote now, we're just gonna vote on the amount.
I mean,
The kind of top line adjustments.
We can vote on the amount by board or capital, but we can't vote on which specific things we're.
We basically say we're reducing Board of Selectmen budget by X. We're reducing the Board of Ed budget by X. We're reducing Kappa by X. And we have the authority here as the Finance Committee to make the changes to the Kappa and pick items. But as far as Board of Selectmen and Board of Education, no, we could just set an amount.
So now, Jill, I don't know that we've done this in recent years, but recognizing this additional revenue, because we can't officially recognize this revenue in any of our materials. We can only recognize it when we calculate the mill rate.
Correct.
So unfortunately, and we don't set the mill rate until after the budget passes.
Mhm.
So how do we reflect that in the materials that go out to the public, that like the mill rate will actually be a little bit lower than it is based on the budget that we plan to put forward tonight?
Well, basically what you're putting forward isn't necessarily the mill rate. You're putting forward the expenditure number. That's
Right,
what they're
I
voting on. But
Right,
that
I
being
absolutely-
said, in the budget document, there you will make a footnote saying
Okay,
that the revenue can't be changed, but, and we'll say where in the footnote expended, where the changes are.
and so we can put what we anticipate the mill rate will be,
Yes.
including that revenue. Okay,
Right.
because,
Yep.
and so I like, and I only say that because people don't really care whether the budget's 17 million or 16 million or 18 million. They only care about the mill rate. And so we need to
But
make sure.
legally, they're voting on the number.
I know, right. I know that.
I know.
I know.
I just-
But that being said, you got to remember that years ago, they voted on a number and then the mill rate was changed from what was in the budget document even after it passed. So that mill rate is not set in concrete.
Right, true.
Correct.
But it's not gonna go.
Yeah. And
So-
again, I will just mention to folks, the mill rate is our tool for 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 getting the revenue that we've identified that we need. And just because the mill rate goes down doesn't mean your taxes go down. And when the mill rate goes up, it doesn't mean that your taxes go up, because it's really based on the assessed value of your property with the mill rate applied to it. So I just want folks to, keep that in mind when they think about things. Because if you double let's say that your assessed value of your house doubles, we can reduce the mill rate substantially, but you still pay the same dollar amount in taxes because that's all we need to run the town. And, vice versa, if the assessed value goes down, your mill rate goes up, but we may not take any more than we already have from you from a dollar perspective. And I say from you, it's from all of us, because we're all, we all live here and we all pay the same taxes.
So Jill, is there any way for you to calculate what the new mill rate would be based on this revised expenditures for FY 26 and the assumed but unrevised revenue for FY 25?
Well, I'm trying to fit it all in. I wasn't prepared for these all over the place things, so you'll have to give me a couple of minutes.
Okay.
All right. And while you're doing that, I'm going to just share my screen and go over a spreadsheet that I put together based on the numbers that Jill and I sent to the finance committee last week, and have this there to, reflect on as we have this discussion. So let me make sure I am on my desktop in Zoom on my laptop, and I am going to share my screen. Share. And can folks see my screen?
Mhm.
So let me go over what I did. I'm going to make it a little bit larger. And hopefully this will work. There we go. And I am going to move things around on this screen over here if I remember which mouse I am using. Get that out of the way. I'm trying to get the screen slightly smaller for the sharing on this screen. There we go. Actually, I can do up one more. There we go. Nothing's lost off the bottom of this. So Jill and I did a quick analysis last week, and basically, I'm going to just step you through this thing up here. So for our proposed budget, I have the numbers that we submitted to the referendum and were rejected. We had a proposed budget of 27,239,518 with a mill rate of 34.74, if I recall correctly.
Mhm.
And then last year's budget was 25,873,099. That was the approved budget. So I'm just comparing the approved versus the proposed, which would become the approved budget. And the adopted budget, I should say. And that had a mill rate of 32.74, but because we had that problem with the grand list, the effective mill rate after we rebated, excess revenue to our taxpayers was actually 30.84. So there's a difference there of like 1,366,419. And so if you want to know what the difference is from the effective mill rate and the current proposed rate, it's like almost 4 mil. It's 3.9. And if you want to get to the 32.74 mill rate, because we have reduced revenue this year, substantially reduced non-tax revenue, you'd have to cut almost $1,100,000. And if you wanted to get to the effective mill rate of 30.84, we would have to cut $2,135,000. And so I'm just going to go down there to the bottom of the page, and I just did a chart, of the steps that you would need to take to make those cuts, in the budget. So it looks like we're already at around a 2% cut. And if you wanted to keep going down further, you would wind up having to cut that, additional funds up to about $2.1 million. So that would be a 2% reduction at the next referendum, 2.4 at the further 2.04 reduction, and then further almost 4% reduction for a total of close to 8% over if we keep going like this. And part of why I put this up here is also because of the way we currently always do business, is we always have this discussion that this is the best possible budget we can do. And then as soon as it fails, we cave and we start cutting stuff. And that doesn't let people who are for the budget really understand what we're going to do. And it doesn't really let people who are against the budget know what's going to happen next. And so one of my thoughts is, if we should be clearer to folks of the consequences of failing to pass the budget by planning in advance what the cuts will be if you do not approve the budget at this go round. And that way people don't know where it's necessarily going to come out of in programs for Board of Selectmen or Board of Education, but they know that if you want this thing to pass, you better get your butts out there and you better vote. And if you don't like those numbers, you better get your butts out there and vote. So I think it is fairer to both parties if we have some plan, and it also gets more people out to vote, hopefully. And we have a better idea, because right now it's like about 26% of the voters turned out, and 2/3 of those said no, and 1/3 said yes. So not too bad compared to past numbers, but I would be much happier if we got half or 3/4 of the voters out, because then you would really have a much better understanding. Kristen.
Thank you, Ross. I think this is very helpful, right? The numbers tell the story. Couple of things I just would like to mention. I know in the past there were signs put up about voting. I had people reach out to me on email and let me know they didn't even know there was a referendum. I'm not saying that this group hasn't done a great job, as between the Bolton Bulletin, the communications that I've sent out, and all the communicating you guys have done. But I think if we can find those signs and put them up in time for the next one, I think that that would be helpful.
They're up. They've been up for weeks, and then Rodney put out the vote today signs the night before the referendum.
Okay.
And the
I
only,
mean, the only other thing we can consider, which is using Everbridge, which is the texting alert system to let people know. However, we've received some complaints in the past about using that for non-emergencies.
the other place I did hear that people, yeah, and I did hear, that's also a good point too, because I did hear from one constituent, actually several constituents on Notch Road Extension, that traffic goes down Notch Road, quite a bit of traffic goes down Notch Road to get onto 384 West or 44 East or 6 East, and there's no signage down there. You know, we have signage where you get off, you have signage where people get on and off 384. You have signage where people go on Hebron Road or Steel Crossing, but we don't have signage, you know, either at either end of Notch Road.
Where people just, citizens can put them in their yards, we just have them in.
They can do that too, and I encourage them to put their own signs up, but we also have an obligation to, I think, to do the best. And if people don't take advantage of it, that's shame on them. But I think it's a legitimate, you know, observation. That's another major artery to and from town that we might want to put official.
Yeah, I
Town
waved at the
signage.
exit for an hour, and there were some people who didn't seem to know that there were voting because they were hollering at me out the window some questions, so.
Yeah.
Got a couple extra people
Yeah.
there, but,
Yeah, because we no longer have newspaper coverage
right,
of the,
Right.
you know, of this stuff. So how do we get it out better?
and we can't send out a mailing every time there's a.
Right. I would encourage you to really consider using Everbridge for emergencies and for voting. I just
But-
think it's something to
I don't-
really consider.
And I don't know how many
Everbridge-
people are signed up for Everbridge.
Everbridge is a notification system. It is not an emergency notification system.
Right,
Correct.
it's right, but we've heard, there's sometimes people have gotten.
And so I would just say for the sake of this one, it's better to let a few people get angry because they got told to vote than to have a larger number say they didn't hear anything.
Do you know, Jim, about how many people are signed up for Everbridge? I know I've asked this before and I cannot remember what the answer was.
So I think there's around 500 people that have signed up for it. But then we were able, when we set the system up, we were able to capture everybody that had a reported home, a landline. So it's pretty significant.
Okay.
I
So
think
let's,
I think the other thing that happens is, if you send out a notification, people receive it, they start talking about it. And so, people, so even though, our numbers may be limited with who we reach in Everbridge, they'll talk about it to their friends and their neighbors, and, maybe everybody will realize that there's a vote happening.
When do you send it out?
yeah, good. So when do we want it sent out?
A week in advance.
The Friday before?
Yeah, Friday.
I think, so can I just offer that I would also ask before you decide when you're sending that out to consider a Bolton bulletin the day before, not the Friday before. Friday comes, people go to their weekend, they get busy, they forget, they're running around and they forget. If it happens the night before or the day before.
No, that's it. I was just going to say, when you told me that, Kristen, it just reminded me of something I learned from my master teacher about what notices you send when to, if you want the parents to take action, or if it's just like, yeah, they should know about this, but I don't really want to hear about it.
We could send 7 because they say people have to see things 7 times before it sinks in.
No, I mean, I think,
I'm just
I
being
think, no, I think it's a good
facetious,
thing, like the day before,
Yeah.
middle of the day of, and maybe it's the week before, just so in case they can make some plans for it. And then I agree with the Bolton bulletins too.
And we may want to start, I don't know how, can we paint our signs fluorescent yellow? My sign is fluorescent yellow. It's yellow and black. It's very eye-catching. The
Yeah.
white and black signs
The
tend
red
to
kind of disappears.
disappear, and the pink is okay, but it's not as.
So Jim, who takes care of that?
What, Everbridge?
No, yeah, Everbridge and the schedule that we were just talking about, because it sounds like we should do it like, I'm saying like a week before, do it the Friday before, do it the Monday before, and do it the day of. And if people complain, what? Do you think it's too much?
Well, I mean, I think we should compare the turnout when we use Everbridge versus when we don't use Everbridge, because we know we got what, 26% turnout,
Yep.
which is pretty low. And if using Everbridge, we get 55%, then like we can say, well, we're sorry we upset some people, but we saw a 30% increase in voter turnout, which is
Yeah.
substantial, right? I mean,
You can unsubscribe if you want, yeah.
I mean, I think we have to remember, if it's substantial, Amanda, I think that's correct, but if it's marginal, I think we always.
right, that could just be because it's not the second referendum.
Because we know that some people say, well, I just don't vote the first time because it's always going to fail. And we do
Yeah.
get a higher voter turnout on the second referendum.
It's typically we'll get 100, couple hundred more each time till it passes, because you wind up basically, the people who are voting yes increase in numbers faster than the people who are voting no. It's also one of those things, it doesn't hurt to try it. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, we don't, because it's relatively low cost.
Absolutely. I'm happy to do that.
So what do we agree on a schedule for Jim so he knows what he's happy to agree with?
I wouldn't go 3 times. Is that what you recommended?
What were you?
I think 2, week before and the week
Night
before and the night before.
Yeah.
Okay, and do you want to do a Bolton bulletin as well at the same schedule or
Yeah.
different?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. What do you think, Jim?
We can set it up however you want. I mean, it's fairly simple to do. Once we have the messaging, we just set the schedule to send it out, and it happens automatically.
And the materials will be posted the week before, right? We don't want to send it out before the new materials are posted, because
Posted,
then,
correct.
Yeah, I mean, that really, that depends on how quickly we get the materials. I know last time, our Ross worked on it with Jill, and it took a few days, but certainly.
We got the holiday weekend too, to
Right.
be aware of with people leaving, because you have, it's Memorial Day weekend. Offices close on Monday, so whatever
but we've got 2 full weeks this time. So it
Yes.
should be fine.
so we should consider getting it by the end of next week at the very latest.
I
done.
mean, this time it's just updating numbers. There's
Yeah,
no.
Nothing
new-
else changed.
Overhaul.
So big overhaul than the,
And the footnote, which is new.
yep,
Yeah, so I say the Tuesday before and the Monday.
Yeah.
Before.
for both the Bill Bolton Bulletin and
Mhm.
Everbridge.
And Everbridge.
Okay. Thank you for the suggestion, Kristen. And is there a possibility of getting another sign on either the top of Notch Road or the end?
Well, Rodney did put the pink vote today signs at the end of Notch Road. They were right there on the corner of the fire department.
Fire department, but I don't think we have any bigger signs, right, that we can put up in advance, though, unless somebody wants to volunteer to build one.
You mean one of the
tri-
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think.
How many of those do we have?
I think there's 3 or 4, but those are always in the same place every year because I think people look for them there.
Yep.
I know I'm disappointed in my hometown of Ashford because the places that they used to put the signs, they haven't put the signs out.
Yeah, I don't think we want to move them.
No, I wouldn't
Yeah.
move the existing ones. This was a request. Everybody said the existing ones were in good places. They just felt Notch Road, and I hadn't thought of that. I live on Notch, and that's a very highly traveled road. Of course,
Well,
most people.
I wonder, it was, the fire department also put it up on the electronic sign, but there is this signboard over at the senior center. I wonder if we could
Oh, that's true.
put it
You
up
could just
there.
put,
If there's nothing competing, yeah.
I think
Right.
if you just put it out in front of the school, you'd be fine.
yeah.
I mean, there's only 2 streets down there.
Yeah, and then you get all the people taking their kids to the school there too.
Right.
We do have a sandwich board sign that we could also, put out near the entrance to the school.
Oh, I thought we didn't have any more.
But we have some, sandwich board signs that were purchased through an emergency management grant.
That would be good.
So,
Yeah, like
those have changeable letters, similar to the sign that is out in front of the senior center, but it's small.
Right. Nice, okay.
That might be a good option either. I would say figure out whether the sign at the senior center works better or the sandwich board sign, but that's a good location because you'll get in that area is a good location because you get all the parents bringing their kids to the school in the morning, plus people going to work.
Right now, they're at the 44 Quarry Light.
Yeah.
Right out front of Town Hall,
Yep.
Way down on 85,
the 85
5-1.
Bolton Center intersection, or down,
way out past School Street,
oh, way down, like
Yeah,
closer to
tree.
Hebron.
on Treat Farm, I think.
Oh, okay.
No,
Please.
corner of Lyman.
Oh, okay, corner alignment at 85, so that's 3.
Can't meet him.
There's one I can't meeting too.
Okay.
I think we could probably use one at Clark and 85, Clark Road, or can't meet again, 85.
In that pullover,
Yeah.
That's a pretty busy spot. I mean, I know there's one, it's on camp meeting further down, but.
So I would think you'd be better putting it down on the corner of Birch Mountain and camp meeting.
Yeah,
oh, really?
Well. Yeah.
They gotta
from
go
French
one way or
Road.
the other.
Yeah.
Which way are you catching them?
Right.
Yeah, for people who don't hit our side.
But then there's one on camp meeting already, right?
I don't know where the
it's
camp
like, it's
meeting
like
one
close
is.
to the
Yeah.
Manchester line, it's like, yeah.
Oh,
And
it's
there's
further
one-
down.
The last one is on the corner of Bolton Center and Clark,
Why don't we?
in with that little telephone.
The ones I've heard the most concerns about was lack of for people going up and down Notch.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
why don't-
if we can use
can
those,
just-
if, you know, if the senior center doesn't have anything substantial going on and we could use
Yeah.
that, that's gonna be much more visible than anything we can create.
Yeah,
And or we could use the BCS sign. Well, the school could use BCS sign. If they wanted to.
so let's do that. We'll leave it up to Jim, just something on Notch Road, either. With the school sign, with a sandwich board sign, or the sign in front of the senior center. When we get the other signs up and changed, let's have that there too, because I think that'll do it.
Yeah, I've written it down.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay. Yeah. So I guess
Can we just
Sure.
go over the
Yep.
changes now?
so let me stop sharing my screen and we'll come back to this after you get your numbers, because we're kind of got to the first line on mine. So let's just firm it up with what you've got.
So the town went to 150,000 for givebacks. The
Total.
yep. The
Do you
revenue
have, are you sharing
changes,
your screen, Jill, anything or no?
oh,
You don't,
yeah.
you don't need to if you don't.
No, I just didn't know if you were trying to.
Well, no,
If
no, no, no.
not, then-
I'm just trying to make sure that I got everything that was said.
Oh,
So
okay.
the town went to $150,000 give back. The revenue changes that I came up with were, I think, $16,288. Then
Okay.
Board of Ed gave back $230,000, correct?
That's for next year.
Correct, yes.
That's
This
a
all- yeah.
reduction in
It's a reduction of
expenditures.
expenses.
Yep, and 100,000 for the town. And $58,000 for capital improvement. Is that
Correct.
correct?
Yeah.
Alright. So that your new number would be, wait a minute now, so. Hold on one second, I gotta make sure that I changed the. Okay, no, not yet, don't have the new number because I didn't change the town's number yet, so give me another minute. I didn't change the 100,000 for the town, so give me one more minute.
Jump down to,
So
Question,
the
Amanda?
new number for the expenditure number should be 26,851,518.
Okay.
That's 230 for the Board of Ed, 58 for capital, and 100,000 for the town. All right, so now
So I'm sorry, the new number is what again, Jill?
26,851, 518.
26 million, not thousand.
Yes, 26 million, I'm sorry,
That's what that was
26,551,000.
Got real cheap.
Yeah, it's been a long day. So it's 26,851,518.
Yep.
All right, so give me 1 second and I'll calculate the potential mill rate.
That's right.
While she's doing that, Mr. Chairman, I can say that those changes on the Board of Selectmen side will not result in any cuts of service. If we cut deeper, the Board of Selectmen will have to think about places where we may have to reduce services to the town. That was something you were interested in knowing, I think.
Yep.
And the same is true for the Board of Ed.
Yes, if I could chime in, please. We are going to be looking at potential reductions to positions and programs for sure.
So we were, ultimately fortunate tonight that the reductions to next year's expenditures were voluntary from both boards based on new information that came in, or analysis of funds that are available through other means, grants that we didn't spend this year that are going to roll over to next year. And so that's positive because it's not impacting services at this point.
We have to hope there's no legislative bills that get passed that have to take effect this year.
Oh, yeah, there's plenty of bills that could impact us at the state level, but. Yeah, bills and cuts. Yeah.
It's fine.
The amount from the budget, 27 million, one we just didn't vote on. What was it, 25 million? One that didn't come in.
So the potential mill rate is going to be 33.77.
That's including the unrecognized but anticipated reduction,
16.
additional revenue.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is
Just shy of 2%.
33 point.
So that's a lower number than we had originally, because I originally had 453K.
Yeah.
So where's the difference coming from, Jill?
What do you mean?
When we added up the numbers originally, we had 453K.
Yeah.
Well,
Is that same amount?
what are you looking at? Your expenditure?
I'm looking at when we just talked about a bunch of numbers that were going to be.
Right.
You're right. That
But
is
they're in different areas, so you can't look at the number. If you look at the expenditure number, it's only what
That's
you
right,
cut.
because some of the stuff we can't change on here.
No, not even, you're looking at that, part of it's coming from, it's not gonna change your overall number that you're going
You're
forward
saying.
for your expenditure. That, the only thing that's gonna change with that is what you cut for the budget. So, I'm not sure what you're looking at. You
Hold
can't-
on a second.
That
gets to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's right. It's right. Because the 65 is the revenue. So the expenses are only getting reduced by 388. The revenue is
Yeah.
quote unquote getting increased by 65, which that gets you the
Okay.
number.
Because I
then
thought we
that's
had
it.
to build in a 65 to calculate the new mill rate.
She did. But she's building it in on the revenue side.
Okay. So
Not on the expense
So
side.
the expense number she gave, that was an expense number. That wasn't an
Correct.
impact to the budget
Correct.
number. I thought it was an
Okay,
impact.
That's why it needs to be added as a footnote. So like
Yeah,
in
I thought
theory,
that was an impact to the budget.
if you calculate the mill rate with the
Yep.
new
Yeah, yeah, okay.
expenses and the current revenue, it's gonna be a little bit higher than the 33.77, but she's
Yeah.
factoring in the 65 to bring it down a little bit.
But the 33.77 includes the 65.
Right.
Okay.
That's what
For
that's
sure.
what I was asked. I
Okay.
asked her. Yeah, she said yes.
Okay.
I know, it gets confusing when we can't actually recognize
What
the
was the
data.
mill rate again?
33.77, which is a 2.93% or 2.93 increase from the effective mill rate, which is a effective or reference mill rate divided by, oops. Darn it, 8.4 equals divided by 30.84, which is a 9.5% increase over the reference or effective mill rate, however you wanna, which was the mill rate that was used to calculate the givebacks.
Yeah, 9.5%.
So 9.5% increase over the actual mill rate that was approved, it would be 33.77 minus 32.74 equals divided by 32.74, a 3.1% increase over the actual mill rate that we currently have. That was approved.
Increase.
The original one was 30.84. I come up with 2.93%.
Yep, that's what I used to figure out the 9.5% increase. Yep,
It was like a 12.7%.
it was 12.65%, yeah.
Yeah.
Previously, so we dropped it by 3%.
We're almost there. Got a lot.
I mean, we're,
Well, yeah, we are there. Yeah.
we're where it has to be. I mean,
That was,
unless we're cutting services.
yeah. Well, I mean,
Well, I think-
that's what I was.
I think
That's
it's
what
also, I think it's also important to understand that that's a percentage increase in the mill rate. That's not the same as a percentage of increase in the overall
Correct.
budget.
Correct.
But I think it's important that people understand both of those numbers.
Right,
But
I don't know
vote, but people vote based on the percentage
the increase in
the
their
mill rate.
taxes, yeah,
Mhm.
unfortunately.
Mhm.
What's, I don't have the old, like last year's approved expenses number in front of me to figure out what the
Russ
new
just had
increase
that.
is.
Yeah, and his Excel.
That's on
Last
Rock
year's,
that's
Yeah.
spreadsheet.
The approved,
What?
the approved last year's expenses.
The approved expenses for last year were 27,200 and, no, 20, I'm sorry, last year FY 2025
Yeah,
was $25,873,099.
all right, so let's see here, 26,851,518 minus 25,873,099 equals divided by 25,873,099. So it's a 3.8% increase in the total budget.
Yep. So it's about what I had up on if you take into account the hokey pokey that we're doing with some of it being reduced on the expense side and some of the changes to the revenue side that we can't officially recognize, the net is still.
Right.
The net is still almost $450,000.
Right.
When you look at what the mill rate is.
And so to explain in like clear terms, the reason that the mill rate is increasing at 9.5% and the overall budget is increasing by 3.8% is because it's right, it's taking into play the reduced revenues.
Correct.
Which I think
Is a massive
not a lot of people
piece.
understand that. They
You gotta
come
have
thinking that the town is
Right.
asking for a significant increase.
Because we're actually not
Right.
increased, just for the records, I know, Amanda, you stated it at the last meeting, and I think it's good to state it again, is that the current budget is asking for nothing new.
Right.
It's to maintain the status quo.
On both sides, all sides,
For
except
Board
for
of-
capital, right? Capital's always a little bit different, but
Yeah,
We have to spend.
we have to
1%
spend
of that.
right.
by law, charter.
And so capital did increase more than it normally did to be, I mean, that budget's going up. There's a lot of big projects that we have that are non-negotiables because of safety concerns and needing to shut down the school due to HVAC reasons, right? We have to address that as well, so. Um,
Wasn't that 1.1 and we took 100,000 off of that tonight?
we did reduce by 58,000 the capital budget.
So I like the proposed tiered.
So let me go put that back up on this.
Flexing my.
Oh.
So let me go put that
So we're
back
not
up on
at
the
the
screen.
540.
And I just would like to do that because I don't want to get into this pattern that we've had that doesn't really get us anywhere. It gets people frustrated, gets us frustrated. And we keep doing the same thing and hoping it's going to be different. And that's like the definition of insanity. And I really want, because at the moment, neither the Board of Selectmen nor the Board of Education they're both reluctant to prioritize what their services are and cut them off and hold to that and make cuts based on what funding they receive. And with them both reticent to do that, the voters really have no idea what's going to happen. And it seems like life goes on after we make these cuts, so they don't really believe us on either side. And so I would like to have us consider that there's consequences to your voting no or voting yes. And this is what they are. And we've spelled them out. They're going to be part of our literature that this is what we as a board will do. And the part of it that we have to go through with it, just like the Board of Ed or Board of Selectmen would have to go through with it if they prioritize things. Because the other part of this we always do, this budget was the budget last week, and then it suddenly isn't again. For what I think are good reasons, but they are hard to explain to people when we said this was our best effort, and now it's $500,000 less. So I'm just, tell you feedback that I've gotten from people, what I think it looks like if you're not part of this process. People just don't understand what the consequences of any of this stuff is. Because like I said, no one's willing to prioritize what gets cut. And so somebody's got to take the lead on this is what it is, and this is consequences, and this is what happens. And if you don't get out and vote either for or against to get what you want, then shame on you.
And to be clear, again, the finance committee does not do line item reductions.
Correct.
We just cut a dollar value. So when we make cuts, we have no idea what service is actually going to be cut on either side of the budget.
And that's other part of this. It might encourage the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education, because other towns do this, and then you have to stick with it, that if you have your priorities stacked up, and this is what I did for a living when I was a project manager. I always constantly did trade-offs with my partners that I was working for based on the funding. Here's what you want to do from a business perspective. If you get all of the money, this is what you can do. If you get 80% of it, this is what you can do. And at a certain point, you can't do anything because you're not getting enough money and it's not worth proceeding. And I personally don't understand why we don't do this here. It takes a certain amount of willpower, and we just don't do it. And if you're not going to do it, we're going to just keep doing the same stuff over and over again. And no one believes us. And I mean, I don't even believe us, because I always keep hearing for the last, 6 or 8 years, this is the budget, we got to stick to it. And then we cave right after the first no. So I'm just saying that's my perspective on it. And I'd like to, hear what, other folks think.
I like the tiered structure approach. I guess my first question, if you go in for that second proposal, do we go in?
That's tonight.
That is tonight. So we've effectively done the first one.
No, I know, but illustratively, if you go for the second one and you hold it at what we currently have here, this reduction of the 453K, that essentially is no impact to current services.
Yep.
Do we give the public the opportunity to vote on that and to weigh in on that? My sense of the temperature of the town is that people are going to be looking for much more drastic.
I am thinking so
So
as
do
well.
we completely bypass that, or do we at least give folks the opportunity to really vote on that?
Meaning,
No disruption of service.
Right,
You mean, do we vote on the number we just threw out there, or do we make additional cuts tonight?
right. my sense of the temperature of the town is that we need to be more drastic. There's gonna have to be
So-
cuts, there's gonna be cuts to services.
Here, so
But do
there's,
we give people the opportunity to first understand that before we remove additional services?
I mean, this was a substantive cut, honestly. Like, this is a larger cut than we've made it
Yeah.
in the past 3 years, honestly, at the first
It is,
referendum.
it's just optically a 9.5% increase over the prior year is significant, but
Yeah.
it's the revenue issue.
so there's,
Yeah.
and I'm agreeing with you on that, but I'm also I'll throw out the perspective again as a contrast, because we need to discuss this and be certain of this, is a lot of the people who are voting no are in an echo chamber. They are not aware of how we develop the budget. They are not aware of the consequences, at least peripherally, that we are if you make these substantive cuts. So again, the flip side of it, and I had the feeling, Amanda, you were starting to touch on this, was that are we being fiscally responsible if we make cuts based on the comments of people who really do not understand what the budget is? And how much is it worth to us to do it? And I want to make sure we have that discussion, because yes, we're elected to represent people, but representing them doesn't always mean saying yes to everything that they want if they're making their decisions based on, incorrect information. So I'm throwing that out there so we can have a discussion. I'm not saying we don't go down this path, actually. I just want to make sure that on the record, we have covered, both sides of this.
Mhm.
Because they're equally important.
Ross, I just need to correct me if I'm wrong. It's my recollection that basically it's about 800 people that come out and vote no. And the no votes have been about 800. And as the turnout gets better and better, then you get.
Yeah. Last time it was about 500 no's. There's typically been the last several years, about 500 people. The numbers are down from before COVID. They were up higher. There's a larger participation. I'm trying to remember. I think it might have been closer to 1,800 or so.
Yeah.
And now it's lower. And so it's 400 or 500 initially that say, last year was much closer for both votes.
Yeah.
They're very close in amounts, like closer to 400 or 500 each. This was 2/3. This is 2/3
Oh,
no.
this was large.
That's right. This was almost 800 no and 300 yes.
So there were a lot of people that voted no that typically vote yes.
Yeah, and friends.
Maybe, unless it was you don't know if it's the same people or not.
Yeah.
No, but I do know that friends of mine who voted for the last ones did also tell me they're not voting for it again. So whether they did or not, I don't know, because we don't know how people vote.
Right.
I mean, the only thing that concerns me, right, is we're at a 3.8, like, yes, it's a 9.5% increase in mill rate and taxes, but it's a 3.8% increase in a budget.
Right.
That is low. When you all look at your residential budgets, right, like, that's inflation, right? We've been below inflation, and now we're barely at inflation. Like,
We have a revenue problem. Mhm.
it's right. It is a revenue
Well, there's-
problem. It is not an expense problem. And
Well,
I don't know I think that if you talk to many residents, right, about there's a certain quality of life that we have here in Bolton, right? And I don't know how many of us are willing to give that up. As someone who's about to have a child, who's about to go into a school system, I don't want that school system to be bereft of everything, right? As someone who values the convenience of garbage and recycle pickup, I want that to continue happening. I know that we offer great services to our seniors, right? We offer transportation and a robust senior program. Like, are people willing to give that up? And I don't want to be the one right now to, right, snow removal. There's some non-negotiables, right? There are state statutory things that we have to do as a town based on state law, right? We need a tax assessment department, we need the tax collector department, we need, there's so many other things that building officials, inlands, wetlands, it's all statutorily required. And so when you get down to it, we're not cutting those things. We are cutting the things that make your life the way they are here in Bolton, right? And the things that you value as being a member of this town, or at least that I'm hearing that people value. And so at this point, I'm not comfortable making more of an increase than we've already made. I think it was a substantial increase, 453,000,
say increase,
decrease,
you mean
sorry,
decrease.
decrease, yes. The 453,000, that's a substantial increase. Decrease, sorry, I don't know why I keep saying increase, but it's a decrease. And I think we should put it out to the town and see what they say, because a 3.8% increase in a budget is not a big number. It's not.
Cost you 9.5%.
It's a revenue issue, but
Yeah,
when I hear that people want to bring business into town, I also hear, well, I don't want Dollar General and I don't want this and I don't want that. So you can't have it both ways.
Yeah. So I will just make a comment to you that it's a expense problem as well, because we're one of
Sure.
the two small towns, I believe, in Connecticut
That has a
that have
school system.
that have a school system like ours. So it's not a normal thing if you look at the schools out there, you know, the way other towns do it. I
But
should
we're
say-
hearing it wouldn't be cheaper to do it other ways.
Yes, but I'm just pointing that out because that's what I'm hearing people thinking. So again, that's why I want to have this conversation, because I don't want to keep playing this game, which we do. And because we never stick to our first budget, we always cut it. And so people always think that if they just wait long enough and they keep this thing going, you know, it's going to get better. So again, what do we do with this process? You know, because if we do go down this road of the tiered things and we say this is what we're going to do, and then we back off that, it's just as stupid looking as if you go and back off. This is our best budget. And that's what we've done every damn year I have been on here and a member of the finance committee. We never, ever say, really stick to our guns with it.
Yeah, I don't know that this tiered approach is something I can get behind. Those cuts are hugely drastic and would mean substantive life quality changes
And
in
then-
the town of
But at
Bolton.
least people know what they're voting on though, like what that means. You know, if you go to tier
Right.
3 or tier
This
4.
is potential.
Yeah.
Right,
This is what it would take to keep it the way we are right now.
right,
Third is X or Y, but.
correct.
Okay,
You know.
I just want to say that I would
Thematically.
go with the tiered and I would just go to tier 2.
Tonight is tier 2
Right.
and we're not there yet.
Oh, okay, but
So we'd be going down to, if we're saying that if it doesn't pass on the 10th, we would be cutting 1 million,
Another-
We'd keep
1.1
going.
million.
that would be pretty drastic.
Terrible.
I wouldn't agree with that.
And you'll get a lot of, unfortunately, I feel like if you get to that point, you're gonna get a lot of people looking to move out of this town. Based on the services that would be cut at that point. 1.1 million is life-changing dollars out of our budgets.
Yeah, and also, to be honest with you, I think there's some changes that neither the Board of Selectmen will make nor the school system will make if you keep going on this, because we do not share certain services within the town that would make sense to
We can do
share.
efficiencies, yeah, we can.
We can do efficiencies like, why do we have 2 motor pools? Why do we have 2 separate IT contracts? Why do we have separate maintenance departments? Why do we have separate payroll? And as long as we keep paying for all this stuff, it's going to just keep staying there.
Yeah, and some of those things we do have on our list of that are under evaluation.
Well, they're
Yeah.
under evaluation, but I have not seen any action plans either from the Board of
Maintenance.
Selectmen.
Maintenance is shared because it's right. It's-
No, you're sharing a supervisor. You're not sharing the people.
Don't they share IT?
And well, IT, there's different contracts, but it's the same company. I mean, and that would.
But IT, there needs to be, I'm going to be clear on the IT part. We share IT, that is accurate. We share the same company. However, there does need to be separate contracts because we had to separate the systems because the town was operating off of the school system, which is not allowed by law. So it had to be separated and they need to be separate contracts.
I don't know about, they need to be separate so much as you can have them have part A and part B, and you might get a better deal.
We are,
So,
Well, you can't do that, Ross, by the audit purposes. It's the Board of Education's budget and it's the Board of Selectmen's budget.
and we are receiving a favorable rate because we both signed the same contracts at the
okay.
same time for the
Correct.
3 years. So we both received a cost benefit, and that presentation was given at a Board of Selectmen's meeting.
Correct.
do think we've made strides over the years, right? We do share building facilities, even if it's just a supervisor, right? That was an efficiency. We're doing shared services with other towns that have increased over the year that have built efficiencies, right? Are there other things we can do? Absolutely. And are we considering them? But it's not something that's gonna happen.
No, none of this
Overnight.
would happen immediately, but I'm just saying I have not seen, and if you guys have them, by all means, do you have an action plan with milestones that this is what our plan is to get this done by a certain date and here are the steps to get there? If you don't, then that's not real, because a lot of good intentions have paved the path to you know where. And I just feel I haven't really seen a sense of urgency with the subcommittees of the selectmen meeting with some subcommittees of the Board of Education
Yeah,
to do something like this.
there have been communications between both boards as it relates to the finance department
Do you have a
and
plan?
consolidating
My
under
point,
with
do you have a
with
plan
payroll and ADP.
other than talk?
But sometimes having that reduction forces you to have a plan. So maybe we need that reduction. And then you find the efficiencies.
And I don't want to go in like with a hatchet and chop, without regard to the impacts, which is why I want to have this discussion.
Mhm.
But I just don't really see this as an urgency or a priority. It's something I keep hearing talked about, and I have not really seen formal plans with people dedicated to it that are shared with this committee and or with the town at large. So that means they don't really exist. You all have good intentions, but you don't really have concrete plans for doing it.
Well, I mean, respectfully, I'm going to disagree because
Show me the plans.
we have a lot of plans that sat on a shelf and went nowhere. And I would say that the plans are in the minutes of the Board of Selectmen's meetings. I think we hold our administrators accountable, right? Like I asked the other night, what's going on with bringing in a payroll processing company? Where do those conversations lie? And so it's not necessarily a plan on paper with timelines, but we are holding people
Well, if you
accountable and we
don't-
are having those
I
conversations.
just say, if you don't have a plan with timelines, what are you holding people accountable?
You can have a plan and it not come to fruition, quite frankly. So a plan is just a piece of paper. If the plan exists in our head and we're making progress, that's what matters.
No one knows it.
All these meetings are public with public information. I mean, all the minutes are public.
What I'm
People can see
saying
it.
is they're all little bits and pieces all over the place.
Agreed. And we can do a better job of communication, but I would not agree that things are not moving forward because there's no plan.
I'll just beg to disagree because that's not how I've ever conducted business, by breaking things up into pieces like this and having them scattered and not having a central person in charge with a plan that is held accountable to what's happened. You're supposed to have this done by this date. It hasn't
And
happened.
we do have the Board of Selectmen does have a strategic work plan and we did put in place some tasks and we have been touching base on it and that is public information. It's out there.
If I went out, where would I find a link to the plan and who's working on it and what's been done so far?
In the minutes of the Board of Selectmen
Again,
meeting.
there's no plan that stands alone that people
Well,
can go
and we can
look at.
we can put a link somewhere else to it.
Right.
So you're saying that we need a commission of action planning.
You don't need a commission so much as if Jim is assigned to do it or somebody else is assigned to do it, they should have a plan that they're meeting to and discussing, and they keep that plan updated and it's available for the public to look at.
And we can post it in a more conspicuous place. I mean, that is fine. I mean, there's been strides on various priorities. I would say like we deliberately, when this board met, decided to have a strategic retreat, right? Which I don't think boards have historically really done, right? So that was a first. Putting a plan on paper with priorities, that was a first. So we have engaged in a lot of firsts in an attempt to be more transparent with the public and let them know what our priorities are and what progress has been made on those. Is there always room for improvement? Absolutely. Do you always hear me talking about how can we be more transparent and communicate with the public? Absolutely. Understanding that everybody has finite time and resources.
And last night's meeting
Mr.
On
Chairman,
the water line.
and the,
I know.
I mean, we have to
Mr.
make a
Chairman,
decision
can you
about
receive-
this budget. I
don't know if
mean,
he's open up.
at this point, I would make a motion to approve the ballot question. Shall the annual budget for the town of Bolton, Connecticut for the fiscal year 2026 as recommended by the Finance Committee in the amount of 26,851,518 be adopted?
So does Amanda have a second on
I'll
that?
second.
So we have a motion made and seconded. Discussion.
Well, I would just like to say that, with the understanding that this budget would not cut services and we want to retain the services we have. And that if the budget has to go to another referendum after this, then we're gonna have to cut, services will be cut. And that people have to know that. But if services aren't gonna be cut, I think it's prudent to cut the budget.
The only other thing I'd add is I do believe that there should be some good faith effort made in the way of calculating what a efficiency kind of gain would be. I don't think we have all of this on paper. I don't know what we could potentially realize in 1 year because of various efficiencies, but perhaps if we put a number out there, it'll force us to really action these plans rather than sit on a shelf. I'd be willing to throw out kind of a $200,000 number, but
based on no data whatsoever.
no doubt at all. Yeah, but I do believe that there should be some level, whether it's for this, proposal 2 or whether for it's proposal 3 or 4. Do we optically let the town vote on first, no reduction in services? Although this would be in the spirit of efficiency, so should be no reduction in service either. It's just a target for the town to work towards in terms of efficiencies.
So you're saying add another 200 to the reduction?
For the next time or this time.
I would say this
This
time.
time.
I personally say this time, but
Yeah.
that's just my thoughts.
$200,000 efficiency standard.
And then we would have
Something
to make a
strive for.
distribution of that in another action, because we would have to say, where is that coming from? Because all we have done so far is, the existing numbers that we talked about and came to a mill rate based on them. And if we were to add this, we'd have to go back and recalculate what the mill rate would be and a new number. And again, this is where I feel frustrated because the way we do this process, it's all done with, wave the finger up in the air, get a sense of the wind, we make a swag at it. We don't really have these discussions. It's not ever been part of our process to have a discussion of what the consequences are to services or anything in a meaningful way when we make these cuts. And I don't like doing work like that personally. And I don't like subjecting the voters to that because they don't really know what's going to happen.
Respectfully, Mr. Chairman, you're asking us to tell you what we're going to cut in service, but you're not giving us any idea of how much you would cut each budget. And how much you cut each budget makes a big difference on what we would cut.
Correct, which is why you guys need to sit and think about that in advance, is that if you get the budget you asked for, this is what it is. If we were to make a certain level of cuts, this is how you rejuggle it to make things work under that.
And I think you've gotten a very concise response from Selectman Gordon, who said, the Board of Selectmen would not look to cut, critical services. They would be they would be forced to have to cut the things that enhance the life of the Bolton residents. And that's things like closing the park, reducing rides to seniors. Those are the things that would be on the chopping block. And I think Selectman Gordon made that very clear a few minutes ago.
No, you just made clear what the cuts were. She said that we would be getting into services, and we did not have this discussion prior to the budget going out and having this so that people know in advance that if you don't pass it this time, this is what's going to happen, to the point of what you just said. I'm agreeing with you 100%, Jim, that's the type of stuff that would be cut. But this is the type of discussion that we should be having in fairness to the public in advance, and it should be a similar discussion, from the Board of Ed, because that it helps inform us is, yeah, we're gonna make these cuts to the budget, and this is what you're gonna lose if
And
we
when
do
the Board
this.
of Ed did that, it was the sports teams and people were very upset.
You didn't necessarily have to do that. You've got gobs of administrators over there, and there's some things to do with efficiencies there. When I walked through that school, I have not seen so many offices with administrators in them in my life. That's my own personal opinion. It's not backed up by any facts other than what I looked at and saw. And I know other people have made similar observations to me about the level of staffing and administrators in administration in the school systems. That level of duplication and services does not exist within the Board of Selectmen's budget. You have one assistant to the selectman here. That's it. You have a deputy town clerk. That's it. And we had a point where both of them were out. Bernice Dixon came in and covered. There is no level of administrative overhead like that on the Board of Selectmen's budget. So I'm making an observation, and I just don't think we ever have these discussions, and I'm bringing them out because we don't have them. And whether I'm right or wrong really isn't as material to me. If I'm wrong, fine. I don't really care, but we don't have these discussions in a meaningful way, in my opinion, in advance of making these decisions and letting people know consequences.
Yeah, and I thought we took a really hard look at that within the schools last year. I mean, we had a really tough decision when it came to the dean of students and that, heavy discussions. And that was a, decently paid role. So it's not that we're not looking at it. And we certainly made reductions last year to adjust for that.
And I mean, I think we love Kristen, all due respect to Kristen, we're undergoing a transition period with a new superintendent, and we have yet to see what that results in over the year. And I would hate to hamstring him, going into a budget where he has no wiggle room. That being said, ultimately, knowing next year you're going to have contractual increases, if he's able to find efficiencies, we may be able to have a level set budget, right? And not make increases based on, and that's not to put pressure on you, right? But fresh eyes, new look, there may be things.
No pressure.
No, I mean,
Not at all.
there may or there may not be, right? The same way any new board, when the Board of Selectmen comes in and looks at the town budget, there's new eyes and new ways of looking at things, right? And I do think that we need to give the Board of Ed and our new superintendent that opportunity.
Other questions, comments? Again, I'm poking and I'm pushing, and I want to have pushback. If I'm wrong, by all means, tell me. And part of I'm doing this is just so we get this stuff on the record with the public, because they typically don't hear this from us, when we have finance committee meetings.
Not at the finance committee meetings, but I will say if you're in our budget
Our
meetings,
Board of Ed
Right.
meetings last year.
we talk about what it would mean to cut garbage, and we talk about what it would mean to
Right.
cut senior services, right? That's to your point earlier, which is the public needs to be involved earlier in the process so they can hear this debate and these conversations.
They need to hear this debate and the conversations, and also this committee was restructured to have membership from the Board of Ed and the Board of Selectmen, and it to also bring that discussion information here. So it's discussed in the formal context of the budget as well. And that's what I want to make sure happens. That's part of why I'm poking and pushing at this stuff. And again, it's just if I make some outlandish comments, sometimes I make them just to get people to tell me, no, that's not right. And I may know the answers already.
There's no right
just
or
like
wrong in
you-
this, right?
No. Well, I can be wrong about stuff.
It's
So if I
opinions
am,
and
fine. And it shouldn't all be opinions. And to your point, because some of this, we need to make it more concrete, because that makes our discussions go on forever if we don't have concrete stuff to talk about. So we still have this motion on the table. And Ashley, you were suggesting that we increase it by 200,000, the reduction, correct?
Mhm.
For this go round.
I think technically you have to vote on the motion that's out there.
Yeah, I know. So that's what, I agree with you, Kristen. I'm just saying this is what Ashley said, so we could either vote on this, or Amanda could make a change, but I don't think she wants to, so why don't we just do? You folks ready to vote? And I'm not able to vote, so,
And Bobby still hasn't joined us, right?
no, not that I'm aware of.
I think
So-
Bobby was trying to chime in before on the phone.
I might have muted him because there was mumbling going on and I didn't hear anything.
I think you did mute him.
So which number is Mr. Mora?
Well, there's only
It's a-
one number.
It's a 463 number, I think.
Let me stop sharing my screen.
Last four digits, 0249.
0249. So let me go and unmute him. So actually, Mr. Mora has to unmute himself. It's star
Star
six.
six. Or hang up and call back in.
Yeah, one or
If
the
that
other.
doesn't work, I believe it's star six.
Star six, Bob.
Is he texting you, Rodney?
No, I was gonna call him. So I don't think that's his phone.
Now, whoever is Mr. Mora, if you're out there,
That got it? Are we in?
that's that
That's
you,
you,
Bob?
Bob.
Are we there?
Okay, sorry, I muted you.
But that's not Bob.
Is that,
No,
That's
that's
not
quite
Bob.
all right.
That's not Bob.
that's not Bob
But,
Mora?
Yeah, I've been listening,
Yes.
listening
It
to
is?
the debate for about 30 minutes, and I do apologize.
It is
if I'm
Bob.
not able to
Oh,
get
it is.
any.
Sorry
You
for
still there?
muting you, sir. Yeah, we're here.
Okay, again, I apologize because we're not able to get access for phone for a while. We're out in Arizona, but I listened to the whole debate, but what I did not hear, and I apologize, came in late, as obviously you've debated a reduction, but what is it?
453,000, which is a mix between decreased expenses for FY 26 and some additional non-official revenue for FY 25,
Thank you.
which
For
Bob results in the new mill rate increase is 9.5% and the budget increase
Right.
is 3.8%.
Right. All right. That just, so to be quite fair with everyone, that number that you're at, it was one in which I was willing to propose myself, give or take $20,000. But I felt that was a fair number as the discussion went, that would allow services to continue at its present level. However, that doesn't mean that it would not hurt everybody, as everybody indicated that, you still have to tighten up something you're gonna have to do differently but to make things work.
So, Bob,
Anything
these are
more significant than that. Anything more.
sorry, just to
significant than
clarify
that
for you,
that
Bob, these
discussed-
are not cuts, Bob. Well, they're cuts, but they were approved by each board. So we're not, like, the board of Ed said that they could reduce their expenses by 230 based on adjustments to insurance and filling vacancies. Board of Selectmen said 100K based on some shifting of money, and then we took 58K from capital.
Yeah, revised forecast based on new information that
Right.
has.
Yeah.
So not like, voluntary.
So all right, may I ask a question? The total from capital was 50?
58. So it's the roofing, taking the roofing, this year's money for the roof out of Lot SIP and the town hall door out of Lot SIP. And then
Right.
adjusting 100K out of town to take it out of the highway budget and pay for it out of town aid road.
Right.
Everybody's got to remember that the Board of Selectmen have to approve that, and the Board of Education have to
Right.
approve their cuts
I
before.
was about to say, the board of selectmen will decide on where
Right.
it is.
But in
And
theory, we
so the
should.
total was what, 153 or 53?
The total unapproved by the
Yeah,
board.
capital.
Oh,
No, in the
was
capital budget,
58.
58,
So,
58.
yes.
I mean, and
And then
quite
100K.
honestly,
Sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, I'm just saying, so you're at 400 and,
Wait, Bobby,
400 and what?
the total
Yep.
expenditure decrease is 388,000. That's what the number we're going forward with at this point in time. They haven't voted on it, is 388,000. The reduction
All
in
right.
the expenditure.
With an increase in revenue,
Correct.
hypothetical
Right.
increase of around
Right.
65.
Okay. Right.
So I just have
So
a
the whole thing,
proceed,
so your net is just under. Okay.
It's just over
Fine.
450.
453, the net. So my
Yeah.
question is a procedural question.
Quite honestly, you're playing around with what items in the capital. There's a number of them that can come out of something else. I would move this thing up to 500,000 with the additional coming out of capital. That's my thought on this. You probably have it sounds
have
like
a-
you have a
Motion on the
Motion.
floor.
Yeah, we have a motion, we have a motion on the floor, and I would just like to ask a procedural question is before we make this motion, do we have to make a reduction in the Board of Selectmen's budget, the Board of Education budget to come to this number?
No, because we can make the reduction and then the Board of Selectmen will
Yes.
and the Board of Ed will formally make that reduction at the advice of the town administrator and the superintendent.
Because typically it's the Board of Finance I've done this in the past, is that we've made we have voted as the Board of Finance and also as the Finance Committee to make a specific cut in the budget after getting input about what they would say they would be able to do.
Right. That's what we're doing.
Yes, but we voted on a number that we're going to cut the Board of Ed by this amount and the Board of Finance by that amount. And then that leads to a total budget to be adopted of. Is what we-
Procedurally, I
Right.
believe Ross is correct.
So I just need to amend my motion to include how I'm getting
Yes.
to that final. So I'll make
Right,
a
you have
motion
to do that.
I'll amend my motion to say that we are getting to that budget that I already read off by reducing the Board of Ed budget by 230,000, reducing capital budget by 58,000, and reducing the Board of Selectmen budget by 100,000 for a total of $388,000 decrease in expenses for FY 26 proposed.
And you have to also
And was that seconded?
60 something.
Is that seconded?
Well,
Don't you
We
have to
also-
also recognize the revenue?
I
yes.
can't though, not officially.
Well, you can't recognize
No.
the revenue, but
No.
you can recognize it with a
That's
cut.
separately.
That's so separate, no?
They've already done their revenue, so we can only recognize it, but you don't, I don't know.
We're just voting on the expense. We're not voting on the
Correct.
mill rate. The mill rate is
Correct.
just referential.
Well, you're voting on the expenditure number for next year.
Correct.
Yeah.
Second, my amendment.
I'll second it.
So, would you consider raising the reductions in capital to 100,000?
What exact project are you considering to get us up that additional 50?
If you have to-
It's.
So we-
it's
we-
not
This is part of
up to the-
discussion. It can be
It's not up to this board to determine where it comes out of the capital. It's up to the Board of Selectmen to make that
I'm asking
determination.
you as the Board of Selectmen
me?
representative on this committee, where we're,
Oh,
in
I'm
your
sorry.
thinking, we can get an
Sure.
additional 50, where are you thinking that additional 50 is gonna come
Well,
from?
you-
Which project?
Where? Well,
Yeah, which project?
One of them, you could actually, I would consider the truck, the 100,000 portion of that. 50, we could take out of, town aid roads.
No, I checked,
We cannot,
and that,
Just did that.
that's not allowable.
You did that?
It's not an allowable expense.
So
on
that
town
was my
road.
thought. Okay,
Yeah, I
that's where I
was,
was going with it.
I was willing to propose that if it was available under town aid road. So what we did instead, I know you weren't here for that part of the discussion, is we offered to take 100,000 out of the highway budget and replace that with town aid road for road repairs for next year.
Okay, thank you. All right, then I'll withdraw my proposal.
So then the motion stands as Amanda just amended it.
Yeah, and I'll second, If you need
Rhea
it,
did.
Amanda.
We
I'll
already
second the motion.
did.
You already did.
So
I
then-
apologize.
So then why don't we do a vote on it? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Bob Moore, aye.
Opposed, abstentions, so it passes unanimously by the voting members present, which includes Robert Moore. What time did you join, Bob? I didn't notice, because we have to mention that.
About 25 minutes ago, 30 minutes ago.
So then let's say 8:45 our time. Just
Yeah.
for the sake of our board clerk who is not here and working
Yeah,
from
I
the
mean,
minutes.
I'm in a so different time zone. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that Robert Moore joined by a phone at 8:45 Eastern time.
So did you finish your,
Yeah.
all voting members voted?
Yes.
Okay.
So all voting members have voted. And so what is the number again that we're putting down so I can write this in here?
26,851,518.
851-518.
Mhm.
Reference mill rate as of right now,
Do we,
30%.
and Jill, we don't vote on that mill rate because we're not there yet.
Yeah.
We
We
don't
have-
put that in the materials as
We have
with
to,
the footnote.
What, yeah, like what it's potentially gonna be.
It is in, I think the second page.
it's the second or third
It is
page.
on there as a proposed mill rate.
Right, but are you gonna be able to put, do we have to vote on that 65 quote unquote revenue in order for you to put that 33.77 mill rate?
So the only thing you could vote on the revised revenue, which it would be, well, I'd have to tell you, if you give me a second, I could tell you what the revised revenue, not including givebacks, because that's not really revenue.
But I thought we couldn't vote on the revised revenue. That it's just like an assumption that we make to
Well,
get
why don't
to
we
a mill rate.
make a note of it, that the assumption is that we identified X number of additional revenue, which after the fact reduces the mill
Mill
rate
rate to, yeah.
to 3.7,
Right.
33.77. So, because if they do, somebody tries to do the math with the numbers in there, it will not come out. If they do the math properly, it will not come out to 3.77. So we need to have a footnote as to why.
Okay.
The revised revenues, not including the givebacks, is 23,884,889. So it's 23,884,889. That's the revised revenues. That you would have to vote on. And again, there'll be a
So that's
footnote.
just including the additional 16,288.
I believe that's what it is. Let me just
And so
double
then
check
your
and see if I-
footnote would be about the 50,000 in givebacks.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So,
So
yes,
then we should have a motion then under item B for discussion of 2026 revenues and expenditures of change to the revenue. I'm asking.
Yes.
I would think so.
yes.
So I'll make a motion to revise the FY25 revenues to $23,884,889.
Second.
And so the motion made by Amanda, seconded by Ashley. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes unanimously by all voting members present.
Transfers.
So shall we move on to transfers, or do we want to finish up the discussion on the other thing, or just put it off? Because we're gonna, if this doesn't go, there's gonna be some stuff to talk about the next time.
But in our materials,
What?
I like the tiered approach. No, I don't know how we would,
I mean, it's not on the agenda.
yeah, correct. Okay.
So let's move on to the new business then. Transfers. Consider and possibly ask the state real estate property mill rate. No, that's not doing that. That's not under there. Setting motor vehicle tax mill rate. No, that goes away. So let's go and act on additional meetings. Let's do transfers. So
Yeah.
just do transfers.
So only one of these needs approval, Joe? And the rest are for our information? No,
No, they all need approval.
they all do? Okay, only two had notes. All right, so, I'll make a motion to transfer $300,000 from the budget admin to the budget ZBA, from the category professional and technical to the category of official admin services to cover board clerk costs.
300 down.
Did I say 300,000?
Mhm.
I amend my motion to say 300.
No, it is 300,
Yeah,
not 300.
I added 1,000. Yeah,
Okay.
just 300.
Is there a second? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah.
Okay.
Second, I'll second.
So which one was this? This is the first
yeah.
one. For $300.
Mhm.
I just have an observation is that we got a bunch of selectmen on there who are not selectmen anymore.
Oh,
Who approve this. It's quite interesting.
so it's the wrong form.
Mike, Ramita, Robert DePietro, I'm not gonna sign this because there's the wrong selectmen on this.
All right,
The only one we got is Bob Moore and Pam Sawyer, so we gotta fix that.
We got
And
two.
Yeah, this next one.
two out of
White out.
two out of whatever ain't bad.
All right, so I'll withdraw my motion until we can get the form corrected.
This, others look like they are correct.
It was approved at the Board of Selectmen meeting,
Right, but the wrong, it has the
I
wrong selection
understand,
on it.
but it was approved and it's in the minutes.
Right.
You don't have to not go forward tonight. It was officially approved in the minutes.
It
by
was.
the selectmen.
Yes,
We use
but
it
I'm
to-
just saying, I'm not gonna put my name onto something that doesn't
on the
have
wrong
that
form.
explained. So if you give me the correct form, I find my signature is needed, I will put it
So
up
do we
there.
want to vote on it and then you sign the correct form when you get it?
It doesn't require your signature.
No, you don't
Okay.
have to sign anything. It's in the minutes.
So then I reactivate my,
So go ahead and reactivate your motion. No, I just want to make sure because I'm not going to put my name on something that's incorrect, but if I
No,
don't need to
makes sense.
put my name on it and you guys can go and fix it behind, to make sure the right selectmen are on there, then by all means. continue.
That's it.
we'll make sure the form gets fixed.
So
So we're voting.
a vote, make a motion, you have a motion, we had a second
Yeah.
by Ashley or
Oh,
Rhea.
second, yeah.
So motion made by Amanda and seconded by Ashley to approve the transfer of $300 from admin to ZBA. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? Motion passes unanimously by all voting members present. Next one.
Well, all right. So I'll make a motion that we approve the transfer of $800 from the budget administration to the budget fire commission, from the category professional and technical to the category proficiency fund, to cover $800 as budgeted by the Board of Selectmen.
Do I have a second?
Second.
So it's motion made by Amanda, seconded by Ashley. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes by all voting members present. Next one.
I'll make a motion that we transfer $10,000 from the budget administration to the budget land use, from the category professional and technical services to the category regular payroll, to cover payroll for the new building official covering Barbaro and other communities under the shared services agreements. This cost is covered by the Regional Performance Incentive Grant and our partner communities.
I'll second.
Motion made by Amanda, seconded by Rhea. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions, motion passes unanimously by all voting members present.
I'll make a motion to transfer 9,500 from the budget administration to the budget land use, from the category legal services to the category regular payroll, with the same verbatim explanation as the prior transfer.
I'll second.
Motion made by Amanda, seconded by Rhea. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Abstentions, so passes unanimously by all voting members present. So the last thing on the agenda is an additional meeting date, and I would suggest that we have a special meeting on the day after the referendum, which is on the 10th, and so if it's not on there already, we should have a meeting on the 11th at 7:15. Jill, is that on the, I don't have a copy of the budget calendar. Is that already on there?
Is what on there?
A special meeting after our next
No.
referendum. The referendum is on
I
the
think it's
10th,
on
which is Tuesday.
No, we did not pick another date.
You didn't. I thought we-
I'll make a motion to approve a special meeting of the finance committee on Wednesday, June 11th at 7:15 PM.
Do I have a second? So seconded by Tyler. Made by Amanda. Discussion. Since we're obligated to do it, I don't think there's much to discuss. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, abstentions, motion passes unanimously by all voting members present. So I guess we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Second. Okay, seconded by
I beat
Mr.
you.
Mora.
You said at the same time, there's a delay.
Yep.
And then we are adjourned at 9:31. Thank you, everybody.